to another edition of the Show Me Hoops podcast. We're the premier podcast for basketball talk in the state of Missouri, and so we appreciate you guys tuning in. Today I'm going to dive into part 2 of the series I call The Genius of Ronnie Cookson. If you didn't get a chance to listen to that first one, where I talked about Coach Cookson's the best I've ever seen at teaching shot selection, please check that one out. It's kind of simplistic, but goes without saying, if your team is taking bad shots, it's going to be hard to beat good teams. I think you can beat bad teams taking bad shots if you got more talent than them, but you beat them no matter what you did. So what I'm trying to do and what I'm trying to say is things that would help you beat good teams on your schedule. And so that's what Coach Cookson always used to say to us, and that's kind of what the second part of the genius of Coach Cookson to me. And again, this is I could go on and on about he's the best I've ever seen at teaching shot selection, first of all. But he's the best just as far as, I guess you could call it, child psychology that I've ever seen. You know, just knowing what buttons to push with different kids. And I think that comes from really a place of love. Coach Cookson, I've seen him take kids home from practice, buy their shoes. I mean, guys knew that he genuinely cared about them, so they were willing to kind of go through the wall for him. But he knew what buttons to push. I'll dive into that stuff a little bit later. Today I want to talk about more of a nuts and bolts and actual practical application of something that I think he did just X's and O's. We pressed everybody when I played at Scott County Central. I remember one night we were going to play Portersville. This was in 1995. I was a junior in high school, and we were going to go play them, and they had a guard named Antonio Sykes. Antonio Sykes, Portersville had just won 4 state championships in a row, Class 2 state championships, and they were just an awesome program. They had a Hall of Fame coach there by the name of Jim Bidewell, who's one of the best coaches I've ever seen in my life, and they had this guard named Antonio Sykes, who had been a starting point guard as a sophomore and junior on the last 2 of those state championship games, and now Antonio was a senior. Antonio is the quickest player I've ever played against in my life. I mean, just absolutely jet quick. And I remember we pressed 1-2-2, and we would get after people and try to force turnovers and all that. And Coach Cookson told us before the game, a lot of people might not have pressed Antonio, but we were going to press everybody no matter what. So Coach Cookson told us, he said, as soon as he gets the ball, when they throw the ball inbounds, everybody just start running backwards. You know, like we were still going to press, but it was almost like a float press, like a float press to the max, really. Like we were just given the illusion of a press. And if Portersville was dumb enough to throw the ball to one of those other kids, we'd try to press him. But we were not going to try to press really Antonio as much as we were just going to try to keep him in front of us. And so that's some of the creative things that I saw Coach Cookson do with our press. We would press 1-2-2. Back in the earlier 80s, like 1979, 1980, like back earlier, Coach Cookson would press 2-2-1. And then somewhere in the mid-80s, he had more post players. He had more bigger players. And so he kind of started to go with more of the 1-2-2, and he never really looked back from that. He stayed with that. I think the 1-2-2 was great because you can hide one slow player in a 1-2-2, or say you have 2 guys who just don't cover a tremendous amount of ground, hide them, maybe one in the middle, one in the back, or put both of them in the back. Coach Cookson was a master at putting people in the right spots in that press. And that's kind of what I'm going to talk about with the genius of him today. And the point that I said in the beginning, we're talking about how do you beat good teams. Coach Cookson used to tell us, we're playing a 1-2-2, and let's just say, to draw a picture in your mind here, that we're playing defense. So we're facing the ball as they're coming up the floor. And let's pretend that I'm on the left side. I'm on our left. So that would be the ball handler's coming up with his right hand, and I'm on my left. Okay, and if you're listening to this, pretend like you're the other person in the middle of that 1-2-2, and you're on the right side. So you would be on their left. Like if that dribbler was coming up the floor with his left hand, you've got that side of the floor. You're right, and I'm left. Okay, so the ball's coming up my side of the floor. It's your job to cover the middle pass, because we all know if that ball makes it to the middle against any press, the press is over for all intents and purposes, because now they're in some kind of numbered advantage situation where it's a 2-on-1, it's a 3-on-2, and you're just fighting for your life to not give up an easy look. So Coach Cookson would drill us. I'm on the left side, the ball's coming at me, and you're on the right side. You cover that middle. And every now and then, especially when we were younger, when the offense, they would run a 2-guard front, and they would just wear that point man out, throw it over his head, and then they throw it back and throw it over his head, throw it back. And I used to play the point some, so, that would just frustrate me. I'm running back and forth, chasing the ball back and forth. And so eventually, one time, if the ball's coming up my side, I'm on the left, and you're in the middle, you would go for that side-to-side pass. You'd go up there and try to steal it. And Coach Cookson would say, hold up. He'd say, don't go for that pass. Don't do it. Because you can steal that pass against bad teams. You can steal that when we're playing, the weaker people on our schedule. But when we go play Charleston, or when we go play New Madrid County Central or Poplar Bluff, the good schools on our schedule, you're not going to get that pass, and so you're going to end up leaving the middle open, and then they're in that numbered situation. They're in 3-on-1, 3-on-2, whatever. And so now we're fighting for our life. So he was, as much as we pressured people and as much as we came after people, you might think that we gambled for that pass, but our press was really designed. Number one cardinal sin, you do not give up the middle under any circumstances, okay? And if you do that, I want you to think about something in your mind. The ball can only go down the floor 3 ways. It can go down the right side, it can go down the middle, or it can go down the left side. So if we take that middle away, there is no way we're going to give up the middle. Then they've got to go down the left side or the right side. They can pass it down there, they can dribble it down there. But one way or another, they have to go down the sideline, and that's where all the traps are at. We've got all the traps set up on the sideline. And so don't give up the middle. So the other thing that he would say, let me go back to that first point again. He would tell you, don't go for that pass because you're not going to get it against good teams, and now we're all out of position. So if you don't go for that pass, now they have to reverse it, that soft, side-to-side pass. So now you're over covering the sideline, and I'm over covering the middle. And then they throw it back to my side, and I'm covering the sideline, and you're covering the middle. Well, eventually, I would have the tendency, while you're covering the middle, I would want to run up and trap. And Coach Cookson would tell us, don't run up and trap him. Because if that player's any good at all, he sees you coming. He sees you coming. And so now you've run so far up that you're nowhere near the middle of the floor. So if they just reverse it now, how can I run all the way up there and make it back to the middle in time to cover that pass? That is our cardinal sin. We don't give up the middle. And so he used this terminology. He would tell us, keep it tight in the middle. Don't give up the middle. Like, I wouldn't stray that far from the half-court circle if the ball was on my side or your side. I wouldn't stray because I'm trying to keep it tight in the middle and dare you, once again, to go down the left side or the right side. We don't care which side you go down. And then, of course, there's 1,000 smaller coaching points that you could put in there to kind of, enhance that. You can't just do it vanilla all the time. You got to talk about what the 2 guys in the back are doing. You got to talk about, how you're going to coach the point guy on that press to do different things. But Coach Cookson was actually, I wouldn't say conservative in his approach to the press, but I would call it disciplined. He was very disciplined that we are not going to give up the middle. And as helter-skelter as it looks sometimes, it was more that we were just drilled into not giving up that middle. So eventually you lose your discipline and you dribble into a place where you really didn't want to go. And then all of a sudden we've got you where we want you. And so that was one of the things I thought he was just terrific at. And he would always tell us, if they throw it back and forth, and we'd never give up the middle, then they get down here and we're set up in our half-court defense, which a lot of times for us was a 2-3 zone. Well, then what's the difference in us doing that or just dropping back in the first place? Like if we never pressed at all and just run back in a 2-3 zone, we're not going to give up a layup. Or if we never give up the middle and we just guard that middle with like our life depends on it, and we didn't steal it, but they didn't get a layup either, now we're just playing a 2-3 zone, then that was a win for us. That possession was a win for us. Now, eventually, we do want to, force some turnovers and make something happen. But a lot of times, what I found in my coaching career, and I found this in playing for him, was where the press really gets effective is if you can be patient and disciplined with your press. But on the other end of the floor, you put the ball in the hole. That's where teams get sped up and they lose their focus, is when you score, not when you do anything different on defense. Because think about what I'm about to say, and you're at home nodding your head going, wow, he's right. You come down, you make a layup, you don't steal it, but they come down and they miss a shot, and you come down and make another layup, or maybe you hit a three, but you do that 2 or 3 trips in a row where your press had nothing to do with it. But all of a sudden you're on an 8-2 run, and they kind of get a little out of their comfort zone, and they throw one away in the press, and now you got to steal on the press. Now they're really in a panic, and they're flustered, and you're on like a 12-2 run now, and they're calling timeout, and they think it's all because of the press, but the press really just did one thing in that run. And Coach would always say, he'd say, if you watch a game, there's always that one run in a game, an 18-2 run, a 14-4 run, something that was the difference in the whole ball game. And for us, we usually made a run, something like that in the first half, something like that in the second half. And it all come down to we were so disciplined, we're not going to give up the middle. And so eventually, because we could score and we had good shot selection, go listen to that other podcast about shot selection, our offense actually sped up our press. And our press, if we hadn't made shots, it would have just been pretty vanilla. But because we were disciplined, it worked out for us. So I appreciate you guys listening. Part 2, The Genius of Ronnie Cookson. And hope you guys have an awesome week. Check out the website, justwintoday.com. JWT.